Welcome back to Assignment with me, Maria Margaronis. This week we're in Istanbul on the eve of a crucial parliamentary election that could change Turkey's future. We're walking down Istiklal Avenue, which is the main shopping street of this part of Istanbul. It's pedestrianised, it's full of shoppers and strollers and international chains like McDonald's and Adidas, and it's very prosperous looking. But only 10 minutes from here is the neighbourhood we're going to, Tarlabaşı, which is a very different place. For some, Tarlabaşı is a haven. For others, it's a danger zone.
Two gangs fight, like ta ta ta ta ta ta ta ta ta ta ta, talk, pot.
I love Tarlabaşı, she says. I don't know what other people think, but I love Tarlabaşı.
Tarlabaşı is home to some of Istanbul's poorest people. Kurds, Roma, refugees, those left behind by the ruling AK Party's rush to modernise. It's also on the front line of a hotly contested election campaign. The neighbourhood is the Istanbul stronghold of the HDP, or HDP, a rising young Kurdish party which might win enough votes to get into parliament. If it succeeds, it could block President Erdogan's plans to give the presidency and himself more powers. Because of that, it's also attracting many non-Kurdish voters. Traffic roars along the six-lane Tarlabaşı Boulevard, cutting the neighbourhood off from the rich part of town. It's quite hard to get across. The AK Party is building its own bridgehead here, in very concrete form. A flagship development project planned and backed by the party has pushed out hundreds of residents. The gentrification it spearheads will displace many more. A long fence screens the building site from Tarlabaşı Boulevard with giant posters of the President, Prime Minister and Mayor and the clean modern world they're making. Mahmut Kaya is our guide. So, Mahmut, can you tell me what these things on the posters mean? Yeni Tarlabaşı gelecektir?
New Tarlabaşı is the future.
And there's a picture of a little boy with a paper dart in front of a brand new building. And Yeni Tarlabaşı tarihtir?
The new Tarlabaşı is the history.
And there's a grandfather with a granddaughter. And what was that one over there?
There is room for everyone in the new Tarlabaşı.
Well, we'll find out. We dodge the cars and walk downhill into the real Tarlabaşı, past half-ruined houses, old men in cafes, barefoot children playing. And look, up there, on a washing line, lines of white long underwear and a line of T-shirts, and behind that a line of HDP flags. The HDP's Istanbul headquarters are in a brown stuccoed house which has seen better days. The People's Democratic Party, as it's known in English, is rooted in Kurdish nationalism, and yet it's uniting non-Kurdish voters opposed to Erdogan's policies: liberals, feminists, Greens, socialists, gays and lesbians. Ayşe Erkan is the party's Istanbul chairwoman. Does the party stand for nationalism or for something else?
If I will say one word, it's a democracy.
Some of your Kurdish voters will be socially quite conservative, and at the same time you have radicals, feminists, leftists, of all kinds in the party. How does this work? How does this fit together?
Bir tek kimlik, tek inanç ve tek ulusla.
She says we are trying to represent those who've been excluded from the system and suppressed along the history of Turkey. We want to represent all of them in the parliament.
Bir kadın olarak toplumun ötekileştirdiğim benim sorunum da.
In Turkey we have a lot of others.
Who are the others?
I am one of them. Woman, firstly. All other than Sunni Turkish men. They are others.
Most people here have battle scars of one sort or another. Hard times are written on the faces of the houses too, elegant terraces built in the 19th century. You can see the stone carvings on them, and it's just such a lively place. All the kids in the street and the washing hanging across between the houses, and feels like a community. Tarlabaşı is grim, but it's also a place where some of those others can feel at home. Like Cheval, a transgender human rights activist who stood for the HDP in last year's local elections.
Our apartments have no door.
No door.
No door. Because we are two families and me, our apartment, and there is no door.
You feel so comfortable and safe.
Exactly.
What makes you feel so safe and comfortable there?
Because it's still traditional families. I mean, doesn't matter they're Kurdish or whatever. They clean the crime by themselves, by their authority. There is no government over there.
You mean the government doesn't go there? The police go there?
Sometimes to check or something like that, but the real authority is inside.
It's run by the Kurds.
Exactly.
Almost like godfathers or...
Exactly. Not in a bad way, in a good way, yeah. But one time, two gangs fight, like ta ta ta ta ta ta ta ta ta ta ta ta pot cut half an hour.
Some say the Kurds make up as much as a quarter of Turkey's population, yet they've been marginalised for decades. Many came to Tarlabaşı in the 1980s and 90s, fleeing a long war in Turkey's eastern provinces between separatist Kurdish guerrillas and the Turkish army. The Erdogan government has given Turkey's minorities more rights. But a neatly dressed grey-haired man who comes up to us in the street tells us a story we hear over and over again.
Kurds have always been oppressed, so no one is looking after our neighborhood.
Can I ask why you had to move?
Çocuklarım ölmesin diye kaçtım. Öldürmesinler diye kaçtım. Yani
To stop my children being killed, I had to escape.
bize ne dediler biliyor musun? Ya öleceksiniz ya köyü boşaltacaksınız.
They told us, you will all be killed if you didn't leave the village.
Bir ekmek vermeye gelip silah çekiyorlardı.
We were squeezed between the guerrillas and the government forces. Guerrillas was asking for food and things, and the government was saying, why are you feeding them?
You will see the old people sitting and watching children playing. The little one with her red trousers underneath the stripy dress. They're playing with broken glass.
Oh my God!
A woman rushes out and sweeps the glass into a dustpan. Her name is Amina, and she invites us into the house, or rather the room, about 2 meters by 4, where she lives with her husband Faradin and their 3 small daughters. She makes us instant coffee, which Faradin used to sell in the street, until he got chased by the police and fell and hurt his back. How long have you lived in this room?
Bu şekilde 3 sene. Bu şekilde 3 sene.
3 years now we've been living here.
And all 5 of you are in here.
5 kişi.
Yes, 5 people.
It's very small.
Artık işte
Kira çok pahalıdır.
bu işte bizim yaşamımız bu. Ardından anlatayım.
The rent is very expensive here. This is all we can afford.
And in the winter, do you have heating?
Vallahi açıkçası burada yani açıkçası yorgan atıyoruz açıkçası.
To be honest, during winter we do have no heating here. We try to use the electrical heaters, but then the bill was very high, so we stopped that. We just put the thick blankets on us and sleep together.
Hasta oluyor çocuklar bazen hasta oluyor. Çocuklar bazen hasta oluyor.
Children very often got sick.
Do you feel safe here, Amina?
Biraz evet.
She says, yes, it is an intimidating neighborhood. We are actually scared a bit. There are good people, but there are a lot of bad people as well here.
What kind of bad people? Drug dealers?
Ya tamam mesela Kürt insanlar
She says it's mainly Kurdish, this area, but there are drug dealers and many other criminal groups here.
What do you think about the building work, everything that's happening here?
Yok şimdi bizim fiyatları şöyle arttırdı. Suriyeliler geldi. Suriyeliler geldi bayağı buraya Suriyeli geldi.
More than the construction and development projects here, the Syrian refugees has increased the prices here, and they can find home, do everything here much easier than us. I'm not saying all of them, but most of them, and they are living more comfortably than us, but it's getting harder for us here.
As people do everywhere, Amina and Faradin blame the newcomers for the decline of their neighbourhood. But round the corner we meet one of those Syrian families. Mariam, the grandmother, is planted outside the basement door, managing several toddlers. As the new development pushes the rents up more, they too will have to move.
She says, as you see, there's no power in our building, no running water, nothing. we're just living in dark here.
Down the concrete steps, we're in an urban cave.
Oh boy, this is a dank basement. There's about 3 rooms, thin rugs on the floor and piled up blankets on the walls. 10 people living down here. No electricity. It's dark. Tiny little toilet, tiles, and a place here with a gas stove for cooking, and that's it. Whoa, child down the stairs! It's awful steep concrete steps coming down into the floor, which is rubble at the bottom of the stairs. The concrete's all broken up. Do they get any help from any government, any charity, anything? Do they get any help from anywhere?
Kasi hun yardım ne heltinin?
Kes yardım nake.
Belediye.
Belediye yardım nake.
No, we haven't received a penny from anyone. Mayor's office or anywhere, they're not helping us.
There is a kind of help at the overstretched Tarlabaşı Community Centre, which occupies 3 rooms above a bakery. Psychologist Ebru Ergun works with children and families there. She agrees that something needs to be done about the neighbourhood, but she says the development project has ushered in a policy of deliberate neglect, and for her clients, it's only making things worse.
Tarlabaşı is characterized with migration, actually. Anyone who lives here came from somewhere else. I mean, somewhere from Turkey or somewhere from the world. Kurds mostly live here, Romans, immigrants from Africa and now Syria, and still a few Turks. And the poverty is really a big problem here. And now, because of the gentrification project, municipality, they're not doing their duty, not cleaning the streets, not collecting the garbage.
Did they used to?
Yes, and drug dealing issues, this mafia stories are now much more often. And that situation is making people want to move out of this place.
How has this place come to be like this? We're 10 minutes from this very expensive shopping street.
Mm-hmm.
You cross the road and you're in another world.
Mm-hmm.
How has it been abandoned like this for so long?
This boulevard, Tarlabaşı Boulevard, divided the town into 2. And this place became kind of servants of the others. And someone who lives in here said, we are living like 100 meters below the civilization. They need this cheap labor.
Up the hill, we meet Taner, who was here before those waves of migration began. Taner has a lawsuit in progress, he says, to save his house from the developers. He sits on a stool outside his door, a little man overshadowed by a rose tree set out to catch the sun. Taner has dwarfism. He used to work as a cobbler until he had a problem with the blood vessels in his brain.
Can you describe for me what was the neighborhood like in the old days when you were a child?
Olduğu gün Rum, yani Yunanlıydı burası olduğu gibi.
All this neighborhood was all Greek. We were the only Turkish family living with them.
Türkçeyi nasıl öğreneceğim?
When did the Greeks leave?
Kıbrıs çıkartması oldu ya. O zaman.
After the Cyprus War, they all left.
Daha gelince hala üzülüyorum, gözlerim yani şey oluyor.
When I remember it, I always feel to cry.
Burada var ya, gravatsız, foter şapkasız kimse gezmez. Temizdi o kadar. Herkes derdi buraya gelelim oturalım. Ama
this area was such an elegant neighborhood that no one would walk in the street without a melon hat and a tie. It was a real nice, elegant neighborhood.
Yeah.
A corrugated metal fence now laps at Taner's house. Behind it, giant excavators claw away the ground. No buildings have gone up yet, though the project started a decade ago. The architect's drawings show an idealised Istanbul, half modern, half faux historic. The site is still a chaos of rubble and derelict houses, with a 7-storey hole in the ground. The old building fronts that are being preserved look like the set of a war movie.
Well, we're right in the building site here, and there's a huge concrete mixer truck and 2 very large machines which seem to be digging out foundations right next to an old facade of a 4-storied building with very beautiful arched windows.
Back on the other side of Tarlabaşı Boulevard, A lift takes us up, up, up into the developer's air-conditioned sales lounge. From here you can't smell the streets or hear the children playing. The project site looks sterile, almost like an architect's model. Feyzullah Yetkin, on the company board, says most of the flats and offices have already sold at $6,000 to $9,000 a square metre.
It's quite expensive, isn't it?
Not expensive because this is international known area.
So you mean it's an expensive area?
We are in the city center, exactly in city center.
And is it mostly for the residences, for the apartments, is it mostly Turkish people buying or also foreigners?
Mostly Turkish, but from Arabic region we have investors, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Gulf.
Will they come to live here or are they just buying it as investment?
Investment and living, yes.
The AK Party government wants to make Turkey a hub for the Middle East, but at what cost for the locals? Yetkin says most property owners on the Tarlabaşı site were happy to sell up. The rest were forced to comply by a new law. Tenants, he says, have been offered flats in brand new high-rise buildings, but they're 35 kilometres from the centre of Istanbul. Fahruddin is a cobbler whose workshop has been displaced. Finishing a black suede shoe, he says he doesn't buy the story of harmonious progress. With help from his boss, he tells us the project is typical of President Tayyip Erdogan's dictatorial style, even comparing him to North Korea's leader.
Sen benden daha iyi biliyorsun. Bütün bu hepsini devlet aldı, zengin kendi adamlarına verdi bu tarla başını. Fakirleri kovdular. Kendi adamlarına verdi, kendi yandaşlarına verdiler.
They take the poor people outside the area, so they give the rich people, so they are making new buildings and they live there.
Have people tried to stop this from happening? Have people tried to prevent the development?
Durdular ama başaramadılar. Çünkü bu adamla kimse baş edemez.
They are trying to stop it, but the government want to make it. So
yani Kuzey Kore gibi burası anlayacak. Kuzey Kore nasıl oranın Kuzey Kore'nin aynı burada aynı.
How the North Korea is Turkey is now the same with North Korea.
Like North Korea?
Yeah.
Why? How is Turkey like North Korea?
Kimse bu adamla başa çıkamaz. Bu adam tek adam şu an Türkiye'de tek adam. Hepsi elinde yani.
Talking about the Tayyip, you understand?
That's Tayyip Erdogan, the president.
He makes everything. What can he do? Only one person.
Was he always like that from the beginning, from 2003, or has he changed? Tayyip.
Her zaman böyle miydi diyor, sonradan değişti mi diyor.
Bu sonradan oldu. İlk önceden demokrasi diye geldi. Sonradan başka bir şey çıktı.
He says the first time democracy, we are making good things and trying good government, good world. But he changed because he got the power, so he changed.
In the hushed suites of the newly renovated Beyoğlu Town Hall, we put our cobbler's view to Ahmet Misbah Demircan, the AK Party mayor responsible for Tarlabaşı. Smiling and expansive, he receives us in a room hung with photos of himself shaking hands with Tayyip Erdogan, just like on the billboards.
Some people who live in the area now say that part of the reason for the project is to push ethnic minorities and poor people out of the centre of Istanbul. How would you respond to that?
Bölgede bir dünya Beyoğlu'nda Kürt vatandaşımız var, yani onların çoğuna
Kurds in this area, in Beyoğlu and Tarlabaşı, many of them are poor and I help them a lot. And they too, we are very friendly and many of them vote for us. So this is just a rumor created by our political opponents.
Another criticism that's been made is that the process by which the project was put out to tender was not transparent and that the construction companies involved are very close to the AK Party and to President Erdogan.
Yani bizim ihalemiz açık ihale.
He says the tender process was open, it was public, and the Çalık Group won the tender. And I would only appreciate and thank to them for getting involved and taking the bidding here, the tender, because they have been flowing money into this project. It's been 7 years now, and they have really worked on this, and I would like to thank to them.
In fact, as the mayor confirms, only 2 companies applied for the tender. The winning one was headed until recently by President Erdogan's son-in-law. The AK Party has primed the economy with huge building projects, including the one that sparked the Gezi Park protests 2 years ago. And opposition to unregulated development is one of the things that unites the HDP's supporters. But, as ever, coalition politics are complicated. A group of women sweep into the Tarlabaşı office of the HDP, decked out in full-length sparkling Kurdish national dress. They've been out leafleting.
Fark etti bir örgütlemenin olduğunu ve o göç mağdurlarının bir
What government disliked was that the Kurds were organized and they were all together here. That the project was mainly started to push people out of this region. They show it like as a development project and so on. They're lying. It's not a development. It's just to evacuate the people from this neighborhood.
When you talk about Kurdistan, do you mean a separate state or something inside Turkey?
LSK'ye de havalayacağız cevap verdim. Aslında düşüncem ne o
There's a lot of joking going on. I know it's a sensitive issue. So what's going on here?
Are you asking me or?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
Yeah.
You're our translator.
Because still the subject is very sensitive in Turkey, and many Turks are paranoid about getting divided. So they had a chat between each others, and she came out with a more political answer.
Yes.
What we are after is living together, but on equal basis.
Some of Turkey's Kurds still dream of a separate Kurdistan. That doesn't sit easily with other HDP voters, non-Kurds unhappy with Erdogan's authoritarian style and pro-Islamic policies. So why are they voting for the party? Back on prosperous Istiklal Avenue, we stumble on a women's rally for the party, where we meet Nükhet Sirman, an anthropologist at Boğaziçi University.
One of the things we're trying to understand is why non-Kurdish people have rallied around or would vote for a Kurdish nationalist party.
I don't think it's nationalist anymore. The party has, since 2 years ago, attempted to define itself as basically a democratic party. And as such, it's the only serious opposition to the ruling party, which sort of thinks that it's conservative, but it's terribly neoliberal. You see what it has done to Istanbul. I mean, Istanbul has been uglified like nobody's business. It's going towards a kind of one-person, one-man show very, very quickly. And the only party which can actually stop this is the HDP.
The HDP needs 10% of the vote to get into parliament. Opinion polls suggest it will just make it. But Erdogan's AK party still enjoys massive support, even in liberal Istanbul, even from many Kurds. Hundreds of thousands flock to a rally for Prime Minister Davutoglu on the Asian shore. Families, women in long skirts and printed headscarves, grandmothers trailing children. Party workers hand out free sandwiches and juice.
Haydi İstanbul. Gün birlik günü. Gün kardeşlik günü.
People are piling into these blue vans and they're being taken off to the rally. And the music, the song keeps playing over and over and over again. Come on, Istanbul. Together for more power.
The AK party has empowered people who felt shut out in the past by Turkey's secular elites, traditional Muslims, country people, lower middle-class voters. But as its support begins to slip with Turkey's economic boom, it turns increasingly to nationalism, populism, bread and circuses. So many forces are pulling against each other in Turkey. Traditional secularism and the AK party's new Islamism, ethnic rights and national unity, power and democracy. There's an edge of threat in the air. HDP offices across the country have suffered bomb attacks. In Tarlabaşı too, the community is torn. Some people will profit from the gentrification. Many more will be pushed out of the neighbourhood.
When you just walk down the street and you see the poverty and the half-broken down houses, you get the sense of a place that's just falling apart. But here, we've got stall after stall after stall piled with fruit and vegetables, people shopping. Looks like any working class neighbourhood with a market where people are meeting each other and talking and it's full of life.
At the Tarlabaşı Community Centre, Ebru, the psychologist, introduces us to Remziye, who recently moved from Tarlabaşı to a flat in the suburbs.
When I go to some other neighborhood, I get bored and you come here and it's so lively and I love Tarlabaşı, she says. I don't know what other people think, but I love Tarlabaşı. I have my neighbors and I feel like I'm in my village and you can get any bus for any place in Istanbul.
If you had a magic wand that you could wave and make something happen here, what would you do?
Kendime bir ev yapardım. Burası güzel. Mahalleyle ilgili. Eski komşularımı yine buraya getirirdim.
I would build a house for myself.
A new one.
And then bring my old former neighbors back here and we will live happily.
And your new neighbors?
Yine komşularımla görüyorum ne kimseyi. Ben işe geliyorum.
I don't know my neighbors. I never see them.
O kadar
I come to work, go back home and never see them.
Erdoğan'da gördük, merhaba diyoruz. Görmedik de demiyoruz.
Sometimes I meet them at the stairs and say hi, that's it.
The HDP's colourful bunting in Tarlabaşı seems a fragile bulwark against the AK Party's machinery. But the fact that so many non-Kurds have rallied to this small democratic Kurdish party shows how sharply President Erdogan has polarised the nation. If it does well, the HDP could stop Erdogan's drive to concentrate yet more power in his own hands and impose his own controversial vision on the future. But if it fails to win that 10%, it won't even make it into Parliament. This is a make-or-break moment for the HDP, and a crucial one for Turkish democracy. Thanks for listening to this podcast from the BBC World Service. I'm Maria Margaronis, and the producer was Mark Savage. Remember those anti-government protests in Gezi Park in 2013 that we mentioned in the programme? If you want to hear more, why not download Turkey's New Opposition, an assignment which ran in August 2013. It too was produced by Mark Savage. Just visit the assignment website. Thanks for listening.